The 2019-2020 year incorporates new calendar shifts around pre-existing vacations and scheduling, which has brought about a variety of opinions from students and faculty. We checked in with students and faculty to get an insight into those opinions, specifically given the 2-week interim between the Thanksgiving and winter vacations. Here is live reporter Emily Huang, 21, with the story.
Thank you. Each year, Thanksgiving vacation follows the conclusion of fall term, and classes then resume for 2 weeks before the start of winter vacation. The arrangement of these 2 weeks have to do with the purpose they used to serve in the calendar year. By their current scheduling, the 2 weeks draw mixed sentiments, especially regarding workload. Some students said that their assignments were intensified, and that the 2 weeks back did not give them enough time to adjust.
I feel like the 2-break period made so that a lot of my teachers either put a lot of work between those 2 weeks because they felt that otherwise we were being productive in class, or for other teachers they may have maybe waited about giving major assessments, but right when we came back the week after, we had a lot of major assessments and tests and essays.
The alternating schedules every weekday can look different, so it usually takes me like 2 weeks to figure out a schedule that works, but then by the time I figured it out, it was already like a weird schedule on that last week, and I had so many tests that I just like didn't really have time to find out what works for me, so it was kind of bad for me. For me, it was a lot of like running around trying to get my homework done, because I think it takes me a little while to get used to a schedule and to get into like a routine for like every week, because depending on like the club meetings that you have.
Since I like changed teachers for some of my classes, I felt like there wasn't really enough time for me to adjust to these new teachers, because since with the new schedule we're only getting like 5 or 6 classes before the 2-week session ends, so I didn't really get like a chance to like really connect with a lot of my teachers that were new.
I agree. I think there's not enough time to adjust, because like the teachers are cramming so much into your 2 weeks, so there's really like not enough time to actually like digest the information that you're learning.
In the past, the 2-week period was used for fall term finals rather than the beginning of winter term. The change was made to equalize the length of class terms.
There were exams during the 2-week period. That's how it was when I was a student, and so that kind of made Thanksgiving break feel a little non-existent, because you felt like you needed to study for those 2 weeks. At least that's how I felt as a student.
In our calendar conversation, we had initially, those 2 weeks were part of the fall term, and the fall term ended with finals during those 2 weeks. We thought that that was actually unfair, because it meant that the fall term would be longer in the number of days than the winter term or the spring term. And that impacted electives, that impacted like math courses, who had planned, ideally to have terms of equal length.
Other students experienced a smoother transition back into the rhythm of school, with fewer major assignments and a helpful gauge on the winter term.
It was kind of like a taster for winter term, because like you could just do like a 2-week push through, and you still got to like understand like what your schedule is like, so it's like good to like feel out what you need to do for winter, but it's like there wasn't too much of a commitment. Like you weren't here for like 8 weeks at a time, so you could like still have fun.
Overall, I think the 2 weeks back did give sufficient amount of time to readjust to the school schedule. Maybe every person is different, but for me, like usually after like this like 3rd or 4th day back, like I'm already like back into the swing of things, This year personally, it wasn't that bad. Like I didn't have many majors, but I did have a lot of friends who told me that like the last week was like even worse than finals week, because they would have like all their majors within like 3 days. So I know for a lot of people it was really hard, but for me it wasn't.
One alternative idea proposed for using the 2-week block was as a mini-term designed for enrichment activities.
I do think that these 2 weeks could be a source of a creative curriculum. There were conversations of perhaps having a mini-term or something like a D term, December term. And there are some other schools that actually do this and use this kind of awkward 2-week time to do some innovative sort of deep engagement teaching. Some examples I have heard are students taking 2 courses in depth for 2 weeks. And so these would be like enrichment classes, and we would just be able to dive deep. I've heard other schools take trips during these 2 weeks. And there are like other complications also in terms of athletics happening during this time, you know, and that schedule going on. But
The past half a year has also brought new opinions on the new class schedule implemented this year from students and teachers alike.
I thought that initially when we had those double block periods that it would be really unproductive because focus and attention would be lost. But then I realized that with the longer blocks, especially for humanities classes, we can go deeper into the material and cover more material each class. So I feel like the new schedule is better than last year's.
I think it gives you more time in the winter term to do things. I also think 2 weeks is a good amount of time to do 1 unit of something, some topics. So for US history, it was a good place to do Reconstruction. It didn't necessarily change much for me, except that I was able to give an assessment that last day. To me, it actually benefited that 2-week period in terms of giving assessments fairly and not trying to overload students with too many on one day.
This year I was teaching Math 175 as one of my sections. It's a course in introductory algebra, but we had talked a lot about a desire to introduce some coding into that course instead of doing geometry. And so we actually had a wonderful experience. And so for 2 weeks, we actually allowed the students to just use a lot of creativity and along with that logic to create a game using a program called Scratch that comes out of MIT that was actually designed to introduce people to coding.
Jessica Guo, class of 23, has just one suggestion for improving the schedule and calendar.
I feel like the 2-week period is a little short. Might as well just cut off the 2 weeks and just have a whole month of vacation.
Emily Huang, reporting.